Okay, so this core lesson is one that is close to my heart. Brevity. Okay, it's not going to be that brief. Brevity. This is something that university has killed because of the issues I spoke about before. Your job at university was very different to your job as a lawyer. And the reason I'm dealing with brevity now rather than up front is because it flows naturally from all the other things. You can't be brief if you don't know your purpose. You can't be brief if you don't know how much you need to explain because you don't know your audience. And you can't be brief if you don't appreciate what tone you need to do and how much filler you might need to achieve that tone. So where does brevity come into it? Brevity is important for a number of different reasons. Firstly, brevity is important because it achieves your purposes better. If your purpose is to seek information, for example, and by the end of the first paragraph you have sought the information, but then you write 2 more pages. The purpose of your letter was to seek information, but only 1/15 of it is seeking the information. So your purpose is getting diluted by the problems that you have gone on to write about. So if you have identified a purpose and you have achieved the purpose, then you are done. You're finished. You can be that brief. But a lot of lawyers feel like things just need to be longer. Perhaps it's because the letter cost a lot of money, and therefore it's dissatisfactory to have a letter that cost a lot of money for your client when it's only 1 page long. But I'm telling you now that a 1-page letter that is a high impact letter will achieve a lot more for your client than a 7-page letter, which is a lot of wishy-washy gibberish. So, what is the purpose of your letter? And that will help you be brief. That's why we did purpose. Who is the audience? How much do you need to explain? Do they want to know about the legislation? Do they want extracts from cases? Do they care how things have been interpreted in the past? Do they want to look up legal principles? Do they want to know all the things that you have considered but discarded in your advice? Maybe, maybe not. That will change depending on your audience, but you cannot be as brief as you need to be without knowing the answers to those questions. Having a good understanding of who the letter is for or who the writing is for will allow you to do that much better. Because brevity is not an objective test. Again, it is a subjective test. A letter or a document or a submission should be as long as it needs to be and no longer. But you don't know how long something needs to be if you can't answer properly the other issues that I've already addressed in this course. So being brief is not necessarily just a matter of using less words. It's a matter of understanding first how brief you can be and what you need to achieve. If your letter is designed to demonstrate your expertise, and that is its primary purpose, then it might end up being longer than a letter which is designed simply to answer a question. So think about brevity at that structural level, how much actually needs to go into it. That's the first way in which brevity comes into play. But brevity also comes into play when we talk about what words we use and how we structure our correspondence or our drafting. And this is where redundancy comes into play. Those phrases that have no meaning, but we put them in anyway. And I'm trying very hard not to rant about this because I'm going to keep it even-tempered in this particular video. I have ranted about it before, but the phrases which lawyers habitually use but have no meaning have a tendency to drive me a little crazy. What am I talking about? I'm talking about things like this. We refer to the above correspondence. Don't know what that means? Me neither. Usually it's we refer to previous correspondence or we refer to the above matter. I just put the two together to give a good example. But neither of those actually has any meaning. Which previous correspondence are you referring to? Obviously you're referring to the above matter. That's why the subject line says what it says. If you weren't referring to that matter, you wouldn't have that subject line. Nor would you have the reference up in the top of the letter, which most lawyers have anyway. So Does that need to be there? The answer is no. The reason it exists is because people aren't sure how to start the letters. And they're intuitively concerned about tone. And that's why they start with that, because it's a nice, easy, sort of slidey introduction into the correspondence. But it doesn't need to exist. If you take it out, nothing will change in the substance of your letter, and very little will change in the tone of your letter. Now, I want to distinguish those two examples from, for example, we refer to your letter dated whatever. That is because you are responding to a specific letter. But if you're not responding to that letter, then why refer to it? Some people just automatically refer to the most recent correspondence for no particular reason. What's the point of that? If you're responding to a letter, by all means refer to it, especially if you've had a bunch. But if you're just referring to the last letter out of a habit or as a matter of course, then you're not achieving anything, because the person's going to go, how is this related to that letter over there? It's not related at all. So take it out. And I am reliably informing you that you're not going to change the tone of your letter too much. The tone of your letter will be set by the substance of it and by other phrasing problems. It will not be set by your use of that easy introduction. The next issue is, and you've heard me say it before probably, phrases like we note that, we advise that, please be advised that, please note that, all the noting and advising in particular, but a variety of variations associated with that. None of those phrases have any meaning. You can delete them comfortably and not change a single thing in your correspondence so far as the substance is concerned. So consider whether they are needing to be in there or not. Some people just use them out of habit. In fact, most people use them out of habit. You have gotten into the habit of saying we advise that, we note that. We note that as the biggest killer. It's a waste of ink. I think we could save quite a lot of ink if lawyers across the world stopped using the phrase we note that. But they're not going to. So you need to consider whether you really need it or not. This is how brevity comes into play. Remove redundancies from your correspondence, and it will help sharpen your attention. It will help you ensure that you've achieved your purpose, because you will start to see very clearly how the letter looks without all the fluff around it. Removing redundancy will help you be brief, and identifying the purpose and the audience will help you be brief. Brevity is not a hard and fast rule so far as length. There is no set length for anything, but it should only be as long as it needs to be. And that's going to change depending on who your audience, what your purpose is, and what kind of impression you are trying to make. That's the end of this lesson. I'll see you in the next one.